Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Modern Goonies podcast. I'm your host, Trevor King Minor, hanging out with my badass co-host, Michael Ross.
I'm drinking a beer.
So, welcome to Season 1, Episode 10, the very last episode in our first season run. And tonight's topic is pretty fitting, kind of to end off our semi-universe-themed season, which is going to be life in the universe. So we're going to go through the likelihood of life in the universe and kind of our own thoughts on the subject, because a lot of this is kind of conjecture. There's not a whole lot of info on this because we've never found life in the universe so far. So as far as we know, we are completely alone in the universe. We think that there's a few different places within our own solar system that might be able to harbor life. And we found several planets outside of our solar system that look maybe hospitable. So I'd like to talk about those first, but before we really get into it, I think maybe the first thing we should discuss is the Drake equation, because, you know, everyone's always so obsessed with the concept of life in the universe, and one of the things that people may not realize if you don't think too much about it is that, like, the likelihood of there being life in the universe is incredibly high. And, you know, the Drake equation kind of explains that. Did you look into that at all?
Not the Drake equation, but the Fermi Paradox.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, there's Fermi Paradox, which that's in there. We'll touch on that a little bit. But, yeah, so basically the Drake equation is just kind of... It was made by some dude with the last name Drake. Who is this string, and it's got a bunch of variables. I watched a video that kind of went into it, but I was like, it's too technical to discuss. But basically, it is the equation for the likelihood of life in the universe to be as we are. So I wanted to kind of go into some of the more likely candidates for life in at least in our solar system. So did you do any research on Titan, Europa, things like that?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. Yeah, so basically there's a few, like, moons of Saturn, I think. Yeah.
Europa is a moon of Saturn.
Yeah, and basically they think that they might have, like, methane lakes and maybe water underneath some of the, like, kind of on its surface, and they think that might be a good candidate, because where there's water, there's life.
Potentially.
Yeah, at least here on Earth, but... the potential candidacy for life is water, and if we were to go into some of those moons, like, they might actually have water, and they could have, like, microbial life. They could have, like, strange fishes or shit like that we just don't know because we haven't gone there to take a look. But it seems like, from everything that I've read, it seems like Europa is the most likely one. And then obviously, you know, Mars. We've been on Mars for a fucking while, and I think I can't remember. Have they found evidence of water on Mars?
I can't remember either. They've found evidence that there used to be water on Mars, and I want to say they may have found evidence of ice. But,
well, yeah.
I mean, don't quote me on that.
Well, because they have, you know, Mars has mountains too, and I think when you look at, like, images of those, it actually has, like, they're snow capped, whatever fucking Mars's version of snow is. So there's water in the form of ice on Mars is what it looks like.
Perfect.
Exists in small quantities as vapor in the atmosphere as well. So, yeah, and, like, that's the thing. So, you know, we have our rovers going around on Mars, and it hasn't found any evidence of life, but, I mean, it would not shock me at all if they found microbial life somewhere on Mars at some point.
That actually reminds me of something called, I want to say, abiogenesis, where it's basically an idea where life from one planet can spread and go to another. And I know this is sort of a tangent, but there is a chance that we are actually, I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds conspiratorial, but of Martian descent. Like, Mars, the planet, was pummeled by rocks in its early formation, and it's older than the Earth. And there are tons of Martian rocks found throughout the solar system, including on Earth. So if life did originate on Mars, and if the bacteria that originated on Mars was pummeled and sent to Earth, like, it's possible.
Oh yeah,
that the bacteria here actually originated from there.
And that's a pretty cool concept. And I've read about that a little bit, and maybe not necessarily coming directly from Mars, but just asteroids in general that have come from the universe that had, you know, just a very basic form of life on it, microbial life. and it hits Earth and it has the opportunity to flourish and become what we are today. So like, yeah, it is pretty crazy that life could have originated on an asteroid.
Now, I would say, sorry if I'm going too deep into it.
Oh no, you're not at all.
The difference between an asteroid and what Mars used to be is that, based on what we know about Mars, I mean, it did used to have water at one point.
Yeah.
So it was a good candidate for a life-supporting planet, and I think it's right on the edge of the habitable zone around our sun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there maybe could have been a very basic form of life on Mars beforehand, like, maybe something a bit more than microbial, maybe like small animals or some weird shit. And obviously life is, Mars is kind of like a barren wasteland now. So there's nothing there now, but there might have been before when it looked a little bit different, because Mars's like atmosphere and like magnetic sphere, isn't it like super, it's like really thin. Like that's part of the reason why you couldn't live on Mars, because you would just get pummeled by like radiation and shit. Yeah. So one of the things that I guess I would be concerned about if we did find life on one of these planets, especially Mars, is that how do we know that we didn't do that? Like if we find microbial life on Mars, how do we know that we didn't accidentally like bring it there through our numerous satellites that we've sent around, or the rovers that might have had our bacteria on it at some point that has been deposited throughout Mars as they move around? And I think that actually is kind of like a concern in some of the fields of science. Like I've heard some scientists like talking about that, like, oh yeah, we might find it, but it might be our own doing, and it's like you would never fucking know. And so unless obviously it looked completely alien to anything that we fucking have ever seen before. But
now, I was actually reading about that. So in case you didn't know, we as humanity recently launched another rover to Mars. Mm-hmm. I forget what it's called. It might be Prosperity. Maybe it starts with a P. But I want to say this new rover found life on Mars, or I mean hints of it. Mm-hmm. And there were already people saying that it could very well have already come from Earth. Like these rovers are built in near sterile environments, but you can only do so much to prevent like Earth bacteria from getting on them.
Yeah, I mean you can do what you can, but bacteria is fucking persistent. There still might be a little bit on it, even if you completely decontaminate it.
Yeah, and that's sort of what the research paper, or some of the naysayers in the research papers have been saying. I mean, it's a valid critique. It's very possible. I mean, we can do so much. We can do a shit ton for sterilization. Like, we do very good, but I don't know exactly the extent of it.
Yeah, no, well, I completely think it's a valid concern, because that was one of the first things I thought about. I was like, well, if we did find microbes, it was like, how do we know we didn't do that? Like, yeah. And I actually think that's a reason why satellites, when they're kind of done with them, they make them plummet into like gas giants, or they fucking destroy them in space, because they don't want that to accidentally crash on a place like Mars, like somewhere in the solar system, or on one of the moons, and then we find life, and it's like, no, that was one of our fucking satellites that had our contaminants on it. It crashed in, and just kind of, it's there now, and oh look, we found aliens. Nope, we found our fucking selves. Yeah, and it would be the biggest kick in the dick to finding alien life of all time.
I mean, to figure out if there is life out in the universe, one of the only reliable ways that we have is to measure light. And I mean, light takes many forms, like radio waves, microwaves, all that bullshit. Mm-hmm. And as far as we know, we are the only intelligent species that has sent any sort of waves out into the universe. Like stars do it all the time. They're fucking stars. But we got radio about maybe 70 to 80 years ago.
Yeah.
So if you take the Earth at the center of some sphere, that sphere of radio wave will have a radius of about 80 light years. So the radio waves that we have sent have inadvertently gone out to space. Like, we can't prevent that. Mm-hmm. And it's been doing that for 80 years.
Yeah.
So we have a sphere of 80 light years of radio waves around us. Our Milky Way is 100,000 light years across.
Yeah.
So if we think of that from the other perspective, if somebody on the other side of the Milky Way if they're as advanced as we are, has been sending out radio waves for, say, 60 years, it'll be another roughly 99,000 years before we are able to listen or even be known that they're doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think this would be a good transition into. I don't want to delve into the Fermi paradox like too much, because I feel like it would just be completely beating a dead horse at this point.
Yeah.
Because I know on the podcast on some of the old episodes we talked about it a little bit in our science one with Mark, and then we talked about it in length with like me, Chandler, and Zach one. So I don't want to just. I think actually one of our episodes is called the Fermi Paradox. So I don't want to go too far into it, but basically for those of you who still don't know what it is or you didn't listen to the older episodes, it's kind of, as Michael said, or I'll put it in Michael's words in a minute, but it's, the universe is so massive and so large, and as I said, kind of with the Drake equation, the possibility for life is it looks like it might be a pretty easy thing, a pretty common thing in the universe, but where are all the space hoes at, to quote Michael, because we have yet to find aliens at all, and we look out into this old universe that's billions of years old, and you figure at a certain point you would start seeing maybe galactic structures, you would start seeing like synthetic things in the universe, but we have never seen that. We have never seen it looking out. And so what Michael just described would basically kind of be an answer, or one of the potential answers to the Fermi paradox. This is that, they could be out there. They could have the tools to listen to what we're sending out, to hear our radio waves, but they're so far away that, I mean, like you said, it'd be another 10, what'd you say, like 900,000 99,000 years before any first contact was made, and that would be from what we sent out in the 30s. So, and it could be the exact same thing on our end too. Now,
I think the Fermi paradox, there's a very interesting response to the Fermi paradox. And I think when considering the Fermi paradox, people really think of aliens as intelligent as us. Mm-hmm. But if evolution is the same everywhere, So we are one species in 8.7 million on Earth that we know. And we are the only ones so far that have the intelligence to launch rockets into space, to make radio waves, etc.
Yeah.
If you want to include crows, dolphins, octopi, and apes, I mean, if you just want to be conservative and give them, quote unquote, the intelligence to launch rockets for whatever reason, then still only 0.005% of all species on Earth have the intelligence to launch rockets.
I do not want to see dolphins launching rockets into space.
Yeah. So, I mean, that sort of suggests that human intelligence isn't necessarily the peak of evolution, or like the end-all be-all of evolution, I should say. Mm-hmm. So I think there could be life on other planets, but it doesn't have to be as intelligent as we are. Like, evolution doesn't have to favor that. Like, evolution favors survival. Like, bats have echolocation. Echolocation has appeared in, I want to say, like 2 or 3 species of birds, bats, and dolphins. Mm-hmm. I mean, the ability to see is important. The ability to hear is important. But I don't think the ability to have intelligence like we do is important. And that's evident by the fact that there have been 5 major extinction events in the history of life on the planet. And of our brief 200,000 year modern history, we are the only ones with that level of intelligence.
Yeah.
So if you apply that to other planets, other civilizations throughout the universe, I think it's much more likely that whatever life is in the universe is just like our snakes, our birds. Mm-hmm. Some sort of life form that isn't intelligent enough to even launch a rocket.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I think if there is life in the universe, it probably does. It resemble, like you said, our lesser species. Intelligent life might be the thing that is incredibly rare in the universe. That might be the tipping point. But just like regular life, microbes, especially microbes, I think that is like unbelievably common. Like, I think that would be. Yeah. And so even that, you have those. It potentially can evolve into something more like I said, like lesser beings, but maybe there are no more intelligent life. Maybe that is kind of like our great filter that we have passed. Once again, another concept in the Fermi paradox is that life is common, but intelligent, like super sentient beings is the rare thing, that we might literally be completely alone in the universe in that regard. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And so this kind of goes into one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit. So it's kind of like Lovecraftian horror.
Okay.
And so do you know about Lovecraft and some of his...
A little bit. Like, I know the concept of Lovecraft. Is Cthulhu Lovecraftian?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
yes. Okay.
So yeah, so
I know all the things, or I know a little bit surrounding Cthulhu and like the general like vibe of Lovecraft.
Yeah, so Lovecraft basically... he's cosmic horror is what it is, and there's a lot of things that we have that are like cosmic horror, like Alien, or Rick and Morty deals a lot with like not cosmic horror, but kind of that essence, like a lot of Lovecraftian themes. Matter of fact, one of the things in the intro is basically Cthulhu flying through the air, like. And the crazy thing about Lovecraft was that he was a sci-fi writer in the 20s. Like, this guy was so forward thinking. I know we talked a little bit about H.G. Wells, and this guy was on that same wavelength. Like, he came up with these things that no one else was thinking about. Hey, what would life look like on another planet? It'd probably be the most horrifying goddamn thing you'd ever seen. And so but I think Lovecraft brings up like a really good point, is that if there is life in the universe, there is nothing saying that it's going to look anything remotely similar to what we have here on this planet.
Oh, exactly. Like, if you are to look at chemistry, the only thing that you can almost guarantee is that the basic building blocks of life are going to be there. CHONSP, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus.
Yeah.
Because not coincidentally, those are the most common elements in the universe.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Phosphorus, not so much, but the other 5, they are relatively extremely common.
Right.
And in addition to that, like, carbon is just quote, a fertile reactive element. And so it's very good for a basic building block of life. We are carbon based. And I mean, you could say it could be silicon based, which is true, but there's 5 times the amount of carbon in the universe than silicon.
Right.
So chemically wise, the only thing we can really say about whatever life in the universe there is it's more than likely carbon based, and it's going to be composed of those 6 elements that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
That's all we can say. We can't say at all that it's going to be human, because we very well could have been snakes.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The only thing that we would essentially have in common with these other forms of life is kind of our building blocks, and that's it. I mean, look at how weird life gets in the ocean.
Exactly.
It looks alien in the ocean. It looks Lovecraftian in the deep ocean. It looks fucking horrifying. So, and that's life. So imagine that kind of spread out throughout the universe and all the different ways it can evolve and come from. Like, what, take our creepy ass looking deep sea fish thing that looks horrifying, and now put that, and that becomes the dominant species. Something like that becomes the dominant species on another planet far away, and those are the sentient beings. Or there's a lot of like floating fucking blob squid looking monsters in Lovecraft horror, and it's like, they have some abilities that we clearly don't have. They might have forms of like telekinesis. They might be able to do things that we can't wrap our brains around. And one of the good examples of that would be, have you ever seen Arrival?
Actually, yes. I want to get a tattoo of that movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's right.
One of those. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Watch the movie. You'll understand what you're talking. But basically, the premise of that movie is that aliens come to Earth, and they're trying to communicate with us, and we have to figure out a way to communicate, which that in and of itself, it would be an incredibly difficult task to communicate with a language that we have no blocks for. A lot of languages we can kind of translate because of the Rosetta Stone, and because a lot of it kind of stems from Latin. So it's like you have some kind of similarity, but like an alien race comes here and starts talking in a completely different way that you can't even wrap your brain around. It becomes incredibly convoluted. But one of the things about them is that, you know, they are an intelligent form of life, and they look like horrifying floating squid monsters. Like but they're super intelligent. They can build spaceships. They can come here. They can communicate with us. And a lot of it is kind of like telekinetic, right? Something like that.
I actually don't think so. Like, I don't know. I don't want to spoil the movie. I don't know how the language works, but
Yeah.
I mean, they primarily communicate through writing.
Right. Yeah. It's
Like, that doesn't seem telekinetic to me. Like, it's almost like they can manipulate they can write with their bullshit, but I wouldn't consider that telekinetic.
well. Then
You
there's
feel me?
that, and then they like view time differently. Like they see it like non-linear, and like that's fucking
I mean,
weird.
that's something else.
Yeah. But nonetheless, I think that's a pretty good example of kind of like a Lovecraftian idea, is that like, hey, if there was life in the universe, there is nothing saying it's going to be one of those, you know, they call them the Greys, this bipedal, walking upright, looking like humanoid alien. It might not be anything remotely close to a fucking humanoid. Like,
Yeah, like based on like I was saying earlier, 8.7 million species on Earth that we have, humanity, like a human-shaped species, is heavily not favored.
yeah.
There are so much more species that do not look like us than there are that do.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, our shape, it's effectively irrelevant on a cosmic scale.
Basically. Well, yeah, because I mean, like you said, you know, look at fucking dolphins, and
Yeah.
it's like they are insanely intelligent. Who
Yep.
knows? Give them a few million years, they might be, you know, human-like in their intelligence, but they're fucking dolphins. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Same with octopi. Same with crows. I mean, crows, they're birds. I don't know what all they know, but crows are very smart birds. I think they have the concept of self-awareness.
They do, well, they can also pass down like memories, from what I understand. Is that, or like, it's not like genetic, but it's like they teach their young like memories. So like I think I read a few stories of somebody, you can like piss off a crow, you can throw a rock at a crow, and like that crow will remember you and pass down its like information to its young. And so you could run into its young like a year down the line, and they'll all fuck with you because they remembered you. They know who you are.
See, you just don't know how intelligent other things in the universe could be. Like, you could say that there could be a civilization of evolved crow, not even people, but evolved crow creatures
Yeah.
that could launch a rocket.
Crow planet.
Yeah.
Launching crows into space.
If you take a look at our timeline, and I think I touched on this earlier, like, life is, I want to say, about 4, maybe 3.5 billion years old.
Mm-hmm.
And the intelligent species that has been able to launch rockets is only 200,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of time that we have been around, relatively speaking, is minuscule compared to the amount of time that life in general has been around on our planet. So if you apply that to multiple, like all the planets around the universe, one, not all of them are habitable. You have to assume that you have a good amount of planets that are, because of the amount of stars that there are. Like, it would be foolish to say that there aren't a lot of habitable planets out there. But you also have to decide where they are at their stages of development.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't know if they're as developed as our planet, or if they're like early Earth, where they were being bombarded with rocks in their early formations. And I mean, shit, like, it's possible that life may not have even formed on them.
Yeah.
It just really depends on, one, where they are in their development, two, if having intelligence really is important enough to create life, or create a species.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it might not be. Like you said, everything else on our planet, you know, some of them have baseline intelligence, but they have thrived and been living here for thousands of years, and, you know, that's kind of just it. We're really the only ones that have morphed past that, so... but yeah, what you said a minute ago about how young we are, like, that's another thing, is that we are a blip, and there might have been plenty of, and then that's something else, on other planets, there might have been plenty of other species that kind of got to our point and were wiped out by some kind of cataclysmic event.
Exactly.
You know, because, I mean, we don't even fucking know if, like, we were the first intelligent life on this planet. Like, there might have been something else before us, but like you said, we've had 6 major extinction events. And we're unbelievably young, and we're talking about a planet that's been around for billions of years. And a popular way to describe how young we are when it comes to the universe and life on our planet is that, from like the Big Bang, it's the cosmic calendar analogy. So from the Big Bang happening, if the age of the universe was a calendar from January to December, human life would have only come around on December 31st, right before the last second before the new year. That is how young and insignificant we are in the time scale of the entire universe.
In another analogy, if you put the timeline of humanity on a clock, a 24-hour clock, from the first second of the clock being when the Earth was formed, then life on the universe forms at 4 o'clock in the morning. Sorry, life on Earth forms at 4 o'clock in the morning. Humanity forms at 11:59, like 58. So 2 minutes until midnight.
Yeah.
On this 24-hour clock.
Yeah. And it's just, we're so young in that regard. We're a blip. We don't know if an asteroid will come and fucking murder us all and wipe out any evidence of our survival, and like that's it. And that could be the same thing with all these other planets. Is that might be the great filter, the barrier that life can't get past. Is they kind of get to our point, and an asteroid comes by, and boop, all right, you step back to the Stone Age, or your species is gone, or there's a fucking gamma ray, and you're just wiped the fuck off of the planet. And so that's another potential answer, is that maybe life has just never gotten this far, or maybe it has 100 times and no one can fucking surpass this certain point that we're at. And so,
yeah, I mean, we've had 5 extinction events. It's impossible to say how common they are, but it seems that at least one would occur, like throughout some fucking planetary evolution. Yeah. I mean, if we've had 5, it seems obvious that creatures that have adapted to certain conditions will die out when those conditions change, much like ours have.
Yeah, exactly. So you just never know. And, we're due for another one. I think we're overdue. So, Yellowstone erupts, we're all dead.
Yep.
Anything could wipe us out, just like a big asteroid. And that's it. We're gone. That's actually something I want to do a whole episode on, is ancient advanced civilizations, not like ancient aliens, but like super advanced societies that were older, like way older than what we thought, but that have actually been here on Earth, that for whatever reason, through a cataclysmic event or just the loss of knowledge, we are no longer there, and like we forget about them all the time. Because like one of the things that a good analogy I've heard is that we're a species with amnesia. Like we don't know a lot of our own history, and we have to make a lot of guesses as to things that have happened distant in the past. So there might be the possibility that we were much more advanced way earlier than we thought we were in our 200,000 year timeline. So I really want to do an episode on that, because I always thought that concept was like really cool.
Yeah, it was. What a concept that is.
It's one of my favorite, like, I don't want to call it like conspiracy. Maybe you could call it conspiracy theories. It's probably one of the only ones I could maybe like buy into. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. But yeah, we should do a whole episode on that. So yeah, I guess we can move on. One of the things I wanted to talk about is kind of the modern alien phenomenon, right? So here lately, we've had a lot of the UFO videos being released by the U.S. military. I kind of wanted to get some of your thoughts on that, because I don't know if I know we've talked a little bit in the group chat about it from like differing parties, but I don't actually know your opinion. So why don't you enlighten me?
Okay, well, I can't presume to know alien technology, so I will say it's very possible that we have been visited in a way that's undetectable, but I just don't see how it would happen, because, I mean, any sort of transportation would require, at the very least, some sort of energy transfer, and we can see that. Energy is just like basically waves of light, which we can see in space. Now, how something got to us without being detected, I'm just going to say, for the sake of argument, that is possible, just because there could be technology that we don't understand. But I don't think it's realistic, just because of, one, how big the universe is, 2, if we're being visited by somebody, then that would mean potentially they are pretty close to us. And I don't think there's anybody that close.
Yeah.
Like, I do believe there are creatures in the universe besides us, even if it's small bacteria. But I don't think a civilization that advanced would have gotten to us in the lifetime of the universe. So all these UFO sightings, I don't know what they are, but I don't think they're aliens.
Okay. So what if, maybe they're not necessarily like close, but what if they have figured out the technology to kind of, use a sci-fi term like warp space, like to get to us in some kind of manner? Or, they found a way to travel insanely far distances in a very short amount of time, wormholes, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Like,
Well, wormholes are physically impossible. But if they can travel at a very fast speed, then, more power to them. Like, the only reason we can't is because we don't have the technology.
Right, yeah.
So I'm not going to put that past it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so have you seen any of the videos of the UFOs, the UFO sightings?
I think I've seen GIFs, but I don't remember them very well.
Yeah, they do weird shit. They definitely do. And like that's the thing is that, Dustin brought up a good point is like, how do we know that what we're seeing, like if we're even measuring it in the right way, like, these are pilots and they're trained and, what they're seeing is it looks very strange to them, but it might just be like a radar error. They might just be viewing it in the wrong way. Cause I watched like this whole video trying to debunk them. And the guy made like a lot of good points. It's one of the ones that Dustin sent. He made a lot of good points on like how you can just read a measurement wrong or something can look super off and it's actually just like a bird or something, weird. But nonetheless, like some of the things that they've captured do very weird shit. Very weird shit. And to the point that like no one really knows what could do that. Like there's no technology we've made that if these things were like crafts, like say they actually are some kind of ship or flying vehicle, like there's nothing that we know of that can do these things the way that they do them.
Yeah, and that's kind of tantalizing because if it's not something that we can physically do, like it has to be something else. Because, if assuming that it is nothing that we know of.
Yeah.
Like if it can't be explained by, say, it being a bird. And I know that's just a shitty cop-out, but just as an example, like let's say one of these things isn't actually a bird and it's actually something that isn't of this earth because we don't have the technology to build it. Like that, okay, like that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And I did say that I'm not going to rule out extraterrestrials because they could travel somewhat close to the speed of light.
Wormholes.
But wormholes, no. Not possible.
Yeah, so like you see that's my thing about it. I can't remember who said it. It might have been someone on the last podcast on the left, but they had said like, if you want me to believe something extraordinary, you're gonna have to show me pretty extraordinary evidence for me to believe it. And that's how I feel about the concept of aliens. In no way would I rule out that aliens have or are or can visit us because once again, we've been talking this whole podcast about how life is probably very likely in the universe. So I believe life is out there. Do I believe they visited us? No, I don't, because I have personally never seen enough evidence to suggest that. But, like I said, some of the things that they have shown on those videos are very weird, and you could make a very compelling case for them being off-world vehicles. And I've seen some articles of, top officials pretty much saying that, like, I think they are, or we don't know what the fuck they are, because the Pentagon report came out, or whatever thing that Marco Rubio snuck into the stimulus package, where basically they had to release a report on all of the UFOs that have been documented. And of I want to say 400 or something cases, something ridiculous, all but one cannot be explained. There's only one that could be explained in that entire, and all of these sightings, the only one that could be explained, it was kind of like a weather balloon. And all the others, they're like, no idea. Now, does that mean aliens? No, it just means they don't know what the fuck it is.
Well, to further talk about, could it be aliens? At the beginning of this podcast, I did say that we've only been sending out radio signals for 70 years, give or take. So, if we assume that the aliens are here in response to the radio signals, then they are within 70 light years of us. And And I just, excuse me. It's been a while since I've looked at the habitable planet zone, but I think there are only a handful of planets within 70 light years of us that are considered habitable. So, I mean, that sort of dwindles the likelihood that it is aliens anyway. But if we were to say the aliens have visited us, and we assume that it wasn't within the past 70 years, that they're here beforehand, one, why did they choose us? If they're as advanced as we are now, but if they were before, or if they were as advanced as we are now, but before, they likely wouldn't be able to tell that there was life on planet Earth. They wouldn't be able to know that we had dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like, technology like that doesn't exist. At least, I mean, okay, not yet.
Well, yeah. Not yet. I don't know. I feel like I disagree with you in a couple spots. So it's like, yeah, you're right. If they are showing up in response to any kind of signals that we have been emitting unintentionally, then yes, they would kind of have to be within that zone. But that doesn't mean that's the reason why they showed up. Like you said, they could have been here for a long time. They could have like noticed us. Matter of fact, there's this whole theory, they call it like the zoo hypothesis, which is potentially another answer to the Fermi Paradox, is that like aliens have been aware of our existence for a very long time, but choose to not interact with us. And like that's one of the things, like clearly if these UFOs are aliens, they have still not made the conscious decision to completely announce their existence, because all they would have to do is just land their spaceship in the middle of New York City and fuck, there they are. So it's like, nonetheless, they're still just observers if these are aliens. So, you know, that to me opens up the possibility that maybe they have been here for a long time. And there's been plenty, if you read like plenty of old stories, there's like, you know, I've read shit like there was some kind of like crash that happened in the 1800s or something ridiculous. Like it's a whole weird, cool story. I think it might have been, can't remember if it was somewhere in Texas or not, but basically it's kind of like people say like this flying craft crashed into kind of like a farmstead or something like that in the 1800s, and this was before they even had thought of the concept of fucking flying. So it's like, you know, it's possible that they might have been aware of us. They might have been here for a very long time. You know, there's the whole, you know, crazy fucking ancient alien theories, all the fucking George Tsoukalos like kind of shit. But yeah. So I don't know. They do weird things, but that just because they do things that we can't quite explain does not mean that they're aliens to me, because it could be like, you know, the U.S. says we have no knowledge of any foreign governments with this type of technology. It's like, okay, so they might have this technology. Exactly. And we just don't know about it, even though we're good at spying and shit. We've just not found any evidence of this being around. And then my dad and I we were talking about this very same thing, like aliens. And so one of the things that we mentioned up is like, okay, well, just because the government doesn't know about it doesn't mean that like some guy who's not sanctioned by the government isn't, you know, building some shit with like a badass team somewhere, or, you know, doesn't have this, the people who are doing the investigation don't have the security clearance of something we're keeping uber fucking top secret. Like, if you're going to keep something super locked away in the government, just because like what, fucking Marco Rubio's like, oh, you must tell us? You think they're going to fucking tell you? No, they're going to keep doing their shit. Like it's like, oh yeah, no, don't know what it is. Like, oh fuck, that's our new badass thing that's been flying around. People have been seeing that. Like, I just think they're either not being completely transparent, or yeah, like I said, it's, you know, you got some fucking Steve Jobs type in a, I don't know, decked out garage underwater or some shit, just building crazy shit. But yeah, I don't think just because it's nothing that we know of now technology wise doesn't mean that there isn't some kind of government or something sanctioning it somewhere. So I don't immediately jump to aliens, but I do admit that if these aren't, you know, just easily explainable things like birds, which they don't seem to be based on all of these high level people, you know, being confused by it, then, you know, I would say that there's something weird going on about it nonetheless. So either high-end technology, it could be, you know, I'm not going to rule anything out, but like I said, I'm going to need to see some pretty extraordinary evidence for me to be like, yo, that's an alien flying this unexplainable craft.
Yeah, like, I mean, like you said, this motherfucker's going to have to land in New York City and disembark.
That's literally what it's going to take for me to believe that they're aliens. Like, I will always keep the possibility open, but I'm never going to be like, oh, yeah, it's aliens.
Oh,
of
course.
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely aliens. Like, look, you can't explain that. It's like, no, unless I literally fucking see one of these things on CNN at 3 p.m, I'm not fucking believing that it's aliens.
Like, I think I'm as excited as anybody to be visited by aliens because, I mean, I I feel like it's an absolute certainty that life exists in the universe. Like, I would love nothing more than to be visited by some other life. But it's just so unlikely.
So you brought up a really good point, actually, about, you being super happy if we contacted aliens. So I actually wanted to bring up kind of a counterpoint, because I've seen people kind of expressing concern, especially Stephen Hawking when he was alive, about the idea of contacting aliens might be a horrible idea. And, he bases it on kind of the human experience, which, I mean, obviously you can't fault him for, because if you assume there's intelligent life, you have to assume that it maybe kind of thinks like us in some regard if it's intelligent. And so one of the things that he said was, from all the evidence that we have of a primitive civilization coming into contact with one that has much more advanced technology, those people always get wiped the fuck out throughout all of human history. That is exactly what's happened. And, just one glaring example, take a look at the Native Americans. They meet people with guns who are much more intelligent than them. They had had much more technology than them. They didn't give two flying fucks. They murdered them all. And so, that's one of the things, is that Stephen Hawking expressed a lot of concern of if we contacted them, it might be a bad thing. They might come here and just be like, yo, we're just going to take all your resources and just fuck you up.
I mean, it very well could be. And I mean, really the only perspective that we have to go off of is the human experience. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you could just chalk that up to human nature. Like alien nature, whatever the fuck it might be, could be very well different. Like they could be a very compassionate group of creatures.
Yeah.
Whatever the hell they are. Like, we don't know that. And we can't know that. Like, I prefer to think of them as benevolent. Maybe like
I think we all
sharing of resources. Of course, like nobody wants to imagine the Earth being visited and then demolished within the next few years, weeks, days, seconds.
Yeah, I would hope that if they visited us, you're right. Yeah, they would just land in New York City, be like, "Yo, we come in peace," typical 50 shit, and like everything's good. But who knows if that's actually the case? Yeah,
I mean, like it's easy to say, yeah, they're going to be destructive, but that's what we would do.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe. Well, yeah, I don't think we would try to visit an alien civilization and just fucking wipe it out, but I don't know. Maybe if we say we found another planet who are like Native American levels.
Well, okay, sorry.
Like, would we just fucking murk them up?
No, because the effort wouldn't be controlled by like the common man. It would be like the people in charge of diplomacy.
Yeah.
Like their very objective would be to be as diplomatic as possible.
Hopefully.
No, exactly, 100%.
No, we get there, it's like, they're causing problems. They just wipe them all out. It's like, yeah, we found life, and we said, fuck it, we're the only ones.
Yeah, like the people who would make that decision I can guarantee they would ensure that we would be peaceful.
All right, yeah, no, you make a point. So that's something else I wanted to talk about. So, what do you think it would mean for humanity if we were contacted by aliens? Like, what implications do you think that would have?
I hate to say it, but Christianity would be destroyed.
Okay, so I want to know why you think that, because I feel like I could maybe have a counterpoint to this, but like, tell me, why do you think that Christianity would be, or just religion in general, but Christianity, why do you think that would be kind of like demolished because of the existence of aliens?
Okay, so I will say that there does seem to be room for God creating other life forms, but I think as most people take it, God created man and like man only, in addition to the creatures on the earth. And correct me if I'm wrong here, all of you Christians out there, because you probably know this stuff better than I do. But if God created man and the earth and gave dominion over the earth to man, then everything out in the universe very well could be cold and dead. I mean, God created it, but we have the earth and the plants and the shit here. In the Bible, it doesn't mention that they have extraterrestrials. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm willing to say that I'm wrong here. But I feel like I hate making categorical statements like that. A good amount of Christians, I believe, think that there is no life in the universe because God created the earth just for us. We are the only source of life on it. And that is why I think discovering any sort of life anywhere would completely destroy that framework.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of take that as that could be just kind of like an interpretation issue.
Yeah.
I'm
open to that.
I think more so than anything, because from what I understand, I don't think there's anything that says, I mean, like, yeah, it says, God gave man dominion over the earth, but it's like, okay, so cool, man gets earth, and then, like,
yeah, exactly,
squid men get fucking Venus or whatever. So
that's actually how I've interpreted it. Like,
yeah.
That doesn't say that there's nothing else in the universe.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think it would destroy religion, because, if there's one thing that Christianity is good at, is like cherry picking everything. And so that would be like one of the things, is that I don't think it would destroy it. Like, fuck, even the Pope has been like, yeah, there's probably aliens out there. So
well,
yeah.
Shit, maybe I'm also willing to say that I have stereotyped Christianity almost to a caricature.
Yeah, you probably have. You're probably thinking of the most devout, like, Earth is only 6,000-year-old type people. And most of them are not like that. I will give them credit. They don't go that far with it. Yeah, I don't think it would demolish religion. My only issue that I would have with it is that, like, say, you're a Christian and then aliens swoop in. I'd be like, okay, so, like, aliens came here. It's like, okay, yeah, you can still believe in God and whatnot, but I absolutely promise you that those aliens do not believe in Jesus Christ. I can fucking swear to you on everything. Those aliens do not believe, if they have a God, if they even believe in a God, they do not think it is Jesus Christ.
God.
It would be ludicrous to think that they think that.
Okay, so imagine alien life was discovered. How do you think that would affect, like, the political world of, I mean, the globe, not even just Republicans, Democrats, the entire Earth? Do you think everybody would just devolve, say that our government structures don't make sense? They're not important anymore?
No, absolutely not. I don't think... Here's the thing. I don't think it changes much. And the reason why I don't think it changes much is... I mean, look at what's happened at the government finally admitting that some of these UFOs are, like, we don't know what they are. Like, no one gave two flying fucks. Like there were some people that were like, oh, holy shit. Like to see it on major news networks for the first time ever, and, like, for the first time ever, you're not being called a fucking psychotic lunatic if you see one of these things. Well, that's already, like, a big step in a new direction that we've never taken before. Because if you had ever said you've seen a UFO, you're a nutcase. You're an absolute fucking nutcase. But now that's clearly not the case because of what we're seeing be released. But this didn't change much. It didn't bring anyone together. It didn't make everyone, like, the world stop or be like, like a big, inhale. So I think, us discovering alien life, I don't think it changes much for us. I think we still bicker and do dumb bullshit with each other. With, like, different countries are still, we're not all going to come together in this big world peace just because, like, aliens were found out. I don't think it changes much at all. I think people are still going to believe in their religion. I don't think it's going to change anyone's, like, perspective super much. I mean, obviously it'll be, like, one of the biggest scientific discoveries ever that we have found life somewhere else, but I don't think it changes anything really.
Well, I think it's an enormous divide between government declassifying UFOs and alien life being discovered. Like, that's an ocean of difference to me.
Well, no, and you're not wrong. I don't mean to, belittle one or the other. I just think that even if it came out tomorrow that they do exist and we've had contact with them, I mean, I think, obviously it would kind of change. That would be, like, the biggest news line forever, but then it just kind of becomes, like, a normalized thing. I don't think it's, like, I don't think it changes anything really in regards of how we interact together as countries. I don't think we're all going to come together and be like, yo, we have to stop this alien threats, or like, hey, we need to all come to peace because they want peace. Like, I think we're still going to be humans and still going to fight about stupid shit. Just the difference is, like, holy hell, now aliens are here. And I'm sure that will get affected politically. It's like, you'll have the right being like, oh, these fucking aliens coming here. And then You know, they've been doing that for a while anyways, but...
Yeah. See, I think that would depend on, like, the alien response. I think there would be a very initial... maybe this is hopeful of me, but a very initial collective. Country borders don't really matter. We're all humans. Because we're... I don't want to say against, but, I mean, it might be a fear. So we are one group, one human... against this alien, I don't know, unknown. And then, I mean, maybe as the excitement sort of dies down, we break back down into our barriers and our countries and our divisions. But if the aliens do more shit, if they could potentially pose a threat, if they do more unknowns, I think we will sort of mesh into that collectivist mindset rather than division by country / culture.
Yeah, and I disagree mainly because of the way we've handled this virus in the last year. And if there's anything that would ever eradicate your hope of us coming together on anything, it should be COVID-19. Because we took something as simple, and I've said this 100 fucking goddamn times, but we took something as simple as a virus, like a natural enemy of everyone, and made it a political issue. It either exists or does not based on how far you are on one spectrum. And so... alien life being like, hey, these aliens come here, one other thing to fucking fight about. I do not think it causes unity. Like in some other countries, yes. I mean, I think some people will get their shit together, but will it unite the world? Fuck no, it's gonna cause a civil war in the US.
Okay, see, maybe I'm just being idealistic here. I recognize that. But I wish we would all just put our shit aside and look at us all as human instead of like left, right, China.
Left, right, China.
Yeah, the 3 political spectrums.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say like left, right, China, Russia, Venezuela,
yeah, no,
all the countries
that.
Yeah.
Those are the only. You have the United States divided by left and right, and then you have China. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, no. So, yeah, that's why I think it doesn't really change anything. But, maybe I could be wrong. I just think it'll be one of those, like, oh, holy shit, like, we weren't crazy. And then, like, life goes back to normal, and your boss is still railroading you and making you work 20 hours a day. Fucking.
Oh, bro, if aliens are, like, revealed in some way, I'm never going to work again. Fucking... my life is irreparably changed. I will be on Twitter for the rest of my days.
Oh my god, what a horrible existence. Holy shit. Yeah, aliens came out as real and I quit my job and took to Twitter.
Well, of course, because at that point, the perspective of our existence is really, really, really put into the spotlight.
Yeah, look, we've been living in this world of made up shit for a long time. Like, we just make everything up. Like, all this shit is just made up. And, but we take it so seriously that we don't realize that half of this shit doesn't matter. If we would all just come together, we could, solve all of the biggest problems in the world. But we're like, nah, fuck you, because of, name anything. So, but yeah, I don't think an alien race coming here would change any of those ingrained mindsets because like that, you're going to have these aliens coming here and being like, I come from another world, and you're still going to have fucking people being like, well, fuck you. Are you fucking alien coming here? I believe in Jesus Christ. Fuck you, you fucking piece of shit. Like, you're still going to have those people. Like, these people are not going to be, and those people are too far gone to even take a virus seriously. So it's like an alien race coming here. Yeah, fuck them. Just another thing for the devil sent here to test your faith. Like, yeah. So that's kind of what I think about it. So, anyways, let's jump topics.
Okay.
So I wanted to talk about, because we can't talk about life in the universe without slightly discussing ancient aliens. Like, we just can't.
Okay.
The look he just gave me was fucking hilarious. Yeah, so yeah, we gotta talk about that. All right, first thoughts. Go right ahead.
Okay, first thoughts. There is no reason for aliens to help any sort of civilization that they deem unfit. They have no ability to determine before they get here whether or not they are unfit. Why would they have the resource? Okay. Imagine as though you are a civilization. You have all your most advanced technology's with you, and you're like, okay, let's tote this along for whatever fucking reason, because we might stumble upon a raccoon that needs to be educated in the ways of Pythagoras. Like, why the fuck would you do that? You wouldn't. You don't think you're going to educate a goddamn raccoon because, I mean, okay, this isn't even a good analogy because aliens don't know what we are.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. Like, why would they attempt to educate us? Why would we give an ant the Pythagorean theorem? It's okay.
So counterpoint to that. So what if we as a civilization figure out, okay, hey, there's life on whatever, fucking Kepler, whatever, and we send something out there and we find a civilization that's like pretty stupid, but like clearly, intelligent. Would we not want to share some of our technology and knowledge with this species that we have found, which is like an incredible discovery that we even found them in the first place?
I mean, it would be nice, but like, I don't feel, I mean, there are some reservations that have to go with that. You don't give technology to a species that may not understand it, I don't think. You have to teach them about it first.
Right, yeah. So you go and then you very basically like teach them. You give them some knowledge. You try to show them how to make things work. You bring them up. You kind of like raise them. You're like, hey, we found alien life and we can fucking mold them and make them more intelligent than what they currently are. Is that not something that we as humans would probably do to an alien race?
I mean, probably, yeah. I'll give you that.
Yeah, so then it's like, to me, it's the kind of the same thing. Like, an ancient alien comes here and we're fucking stupid hitting each other with bones as Neanderthals. And they're like, hey, maybe we can, like, teach these monkeys some things.
Yeah, okay. I mean, okay. I mean, I guess this has more of a question to do with timing then. But why would they come within the 200,000 years of humanity instead of the 3.9 billion years of life that we've had?
Well, maybe they did. And maybe they just didn't care, didn't see anything worth their time. Maybe they kept an eye on the planets. Nonetheless, you find a planet with life. Say you're like really old. You find some planet with like fucking dinosaurs. Say you keep an eye on that planet. Like, what you think if we found life on another planet, you think we're just going to be like, oh, well, we didn't find intelligent life, so fuck this planet. No, we're going to be like, holy shit, yeah.
You're right. But what would spur them to visit Earth as opposed to, say, another technologically, evolved, not technologically evolved, but like animal evolved planet?
So take the way that we find out that planets are potentially habitable. So we look out at a star basically, and then we see how the light bends when a planet passes through it, and then light goes through its atmosphere, and we can kind of tell its chemical makeups depending on the way that light shifts. So say they have a similar process, and by the way, that it is, I think it's like an incredibly low percentage if you're constantly looking at one star to see an exoplanet. Like, it might be there, but it is incredibly, you basically have to be looking at it at the perfect time to see it. So say they do that and they see us and they're like, hey, that is like the nearest one, or one that makes a lot of sense to go to, or the only one we know for certain is there and potentially habitable. And they do the same thing that we would do. It's like, all right, well, we have the technology to venture out to it. Let's go see what's on it. So it's not necessarily that we're like some special thing. It's just like, oh, hey, maybe time and circumstance made it reasonable for them to come out and visit our planet.
Yeah, I'll admit, like, this is a topic where I try to keep as scientific as possible, but I've clearly abandoned some of my scientific principles, because that's exactly how it should be.
Yeah. No. I get it, because like if you watch one episode of Ancient Aliens, they go so off the deep end that like your rant is exactly how you feel about it. It's like, okay, come on, man. But it's like if you took it from a more scientific approach, or a more like just rational, not like they have visited us and here's all of the evidence, and it's clearly there's no evidence, then it's like, just if you approach it more like a theoretical sense, I think it makes more sense than just what those crazy fucks are saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like, I don't know. Have you ever seen anything on that show that has even sounded compelling to you? Have you ever seen anything that has kind of made you be like, okay, they're crazy, but that maybe on that one?
To be honest, the Egyptian pyramids.
Okay.
There's nothing in me that has any idea how the pyramids were built.
So this goes into the topic, the podcast that we are gonna do, the ancient advanced civilization that I want to talk about, because I think that one would probably be a more fitting answer than aliens. But yeah, nonetheless. Yeah. So the pyramids and kind of like megalithic structures have kind of been one to you.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not saying that past humans were not able to do it themselves.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as I know. And maybe I just haven't been reading the right papers. Maybe I just haven't been reading the right articles. But as far as I know, like that shouldn't have been possible with the technologies that they had.
Yeah, there's been some explanations of it. And I think pretty much every explanation they throw out about the pyramids is kind of you get a lot of even mainstream archaeologists being like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't think there's any kind of concrete answer to how they were built. And like, you have some that make sense, but still are like, okay, but how did they exactly accomplish this amazing feat? But yeah, so that is one that's like super weird. Some of the things that I think are compelling on that show, one of like a fucking million other things that are not at all. But I think, when they go back and they look at like old religious texts, I think it's pretty cool that they make parallels of like, because what is religion? To me, religion it was a way for older civilizations to explain the world around them. They didn't have science, they didn't have telescopes and shit like that. They're trying to explain, how are we here? Why are we here? What's going on? And religion is a natural answer to that. So it's like now, they'd say an ancient civilization encountered some kind of like crazy alien or some kind of whatever that they could not explain. They have no idea. They don't even have the words to explain if an alien landed in a spaceship. And so they come up with concepts of gods ascending from the heavens in vehicles or whatever. And there's a lot of that in like old text that like I'll give them. I'm like, okay, that is a pretty neat idea. It's like how we got some of these ideas of gods. And if you look at the stories and some of the shit that these gods are doing, it's like stuff that, we would do if we went to another planet and like landed. And if they had no idea how to describe what the fuck we are, they would be like, yeah, gods. Like that would literally be like if we were like just Native Americans, like go back to like Native Americans and like you landed in one of our planes, you'd be like, yeah, they are gods. Like, so I'll give them that. I think that is pretty compelling. And then one thing that I think is compelling, but also I think relates to the ancient civilization theory, is that the idea that there's a lot of structures, there's a lot of architecture, a lot of artifacts that you find that are on one side of the planet in like ancient native days, and then over in like Japan or like other parts of the world, completely disconnected, but they have everything is very similar. They have a lot of similarities between them. It's like, okay, how did they have almost the same style of architecture even though they were literally worlds apart and they didn't even know that there were other continents besides like their own? I think that is pretty interesting. Now you could probably argue that as humans evolve, it's kind of natural for like pyramidal shaped structures to come about, or like you inevitably kind of figure out things as you go along. I mean, for instance, calculus was pretty much invented at the same time.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, exactly. Calculus was invented at the same time by two different people, essentially. Like they had no knowledge of each other, and they both made calculus.
Yeah, like I know it's not an exact translation, but it does demonstrate the idea that certain ideas can be thought of concurrently by different civilizations.
Yes,
or
exactly.
Different people.
And I think that's a good counter argument, obviously. Like I think that is much more likely than we were visited by aliens in the past. But I mean, like it is one thing that I do think is interesting to think about, because it's like, okay, yeah, how do all of these civilizations have these crazy concepts? How do a lot of them have kind of very similar origin stories? They all have, a lot of them are dealing with great floods and things like that. A lot that translate across religions. And yeah, I think that is one. I think that's one thing to kind of that's pretty cool to just sit and think about. It's like, all right, but those are literally like the only two things that I'll give them that are compelling. Because yeah, like I said, I think like hey, aliens visiting and look, the gods, and like some of these crazy stories they have come up. I think a lot of that would make sense in the sense of like, maybe something did land and they couldn't explain it and whatever, but that's about it. All this other shit that they say, it is fucking nuts. Like I literally, like I watched the show like a little bit when I was a kid, like when it first came out in like 2010 or something like that. It's a while back, and they're still running with it. Now I know it's just completely commercialized. They're just like saying dumb shit, but like the dumbest one, the first time that made me be like, "What the fuck is this show?" was they were talking about like Noah's Ark, and they're like, Noah's Ark was actually a giant sperm bank.
Oh my god, I remember you talking to us about this in like not elementary school, like 8th grade or high school or some shit. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was like Noah's Ark was a giant sperm bank and the moon is the Death Star. I was literally just sitting there like, what in the how the fuck is this on the History Channel? And I'm like 13. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Now, I guess on the subject of multiple shit happening at the same time, like ideas popping up around the world at the same time. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. Feel free to give me a DM or something wherever. Actually, I don't have it wherever. On Twitter or some shit. But there's a philosophical tool called Occam's Razor. Are you familiar?
Yeah, the simplest explanation is often the one that is correct or the most correct or something like that.
Yeah, like the one with the least assumptions, the most simple. Mm-hmm. And it's the easiest thing to say that people have just thought of these ideas independently, but at the same time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no. And once again, I completely agree. That was once again my counterpoint to that. But I just thought it was a cool thing to discuss. But one of the things that I think is interesting about it, and I think Mark Thompson has brought up this point before, is that like we kind of scoff and we laugh at like the ancient alien theory, but it actually has more logical sense to it than a lot of religions do. And I thought that was a pretty, like, obviously if you're religious, you're going to disagree. I don't mean to step on any toes. I'm not attacking you or anything, but I thought that was actually an interesting point that he brought up, because like he's technically right. Like technically it makes more sense to believe that there are, alien life, and as we've been talking this entire time, that is statistically very probable to come here and give us technology and people think that they're gods, than it is that there is an unnatural, like supernatural being in the world guiding your every move.
That is a good point. That's something that I've never thought about. Like, for all the things that I have against religion, no offense to those religious out there, I haven't considered that perspective.
Yeah. So, obviously there's parts of it that are ridiculous. Like, I don't believe that Hurricane Katrina was orchestrated by aliens pointing a laser beam at the earth. Like, clearly they're going too far there. But if you just want to make the argument that, hey, aliens could have maybe visited us and given us technology or like altered some of our DNA in the past, that is technically more logically sound than just it's magic.
Yeah.
So
from a scientific standpoint, the two are indistinguishable.
I guess you're right, because you can't prove...
it's a lack of evidence.
Yeah.
At both of their cores.
Yeah. But also if we want to take that approach, I guess then like anything's fucking game, because we have
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. No, but I thought that was a good point. I thought it was kind of like an interesting philosophical question that he like brought up. And I don't know if he got that from somewhere else, but nonetheless, Mark, if you're listening, good point.
Great point.
Yeah.
Something I never considered. I tip my hat to you.
Yeah.
I have a pink hat on right now. My right hand is on it. I have tipped it to you.
Timmy Turner up in this bitch. All right. Well, I guess that concludes our very first season. So I want to thank all of you so much for tuning in to Michael and I for these last 10 weeks. I mean, it seriously means the world to us. We've recently passed our 2-year mark of doing the podcast, and it's taken us pretty much all of that time to kind of find our footing and settle on a format that we really want to stick to for a long time. And I think this is probably it. So I want to thank you to everyone who's given us a listen in the last 2 years. And, it's never been about a big following to us. It's always been about just having fun with friends and having meaningful conversations that we can look back on in the years to come. So even if you only listened for 10 minutes, sincerely, thank you very much. So we're going to be taking a few-week break while we plan out and record season 2. But we have an entire 10-week start, since we've been recording this for months already. So while this episode wraps up, like the very last episode in season 1, this is July 29th, and it won't even air until early October. So, hopefully within that time, we'll have a lot of season 2 done, and you won't really have to have all that long of a break, maybe a couple weeks. At the absolute maximum, though, we will not make you wait more than 1 month. So we'll kind of figure that out as we go along. Like pretty much after this podcast, we're going to start planning what it is that we want to do. But seriously, thank you all so much. I have been your host, Trevor King Minor, and this has been my amazing co-host, Michael Ross.
I like beer.
And we will see you guys in season 2. Good night, guys.